Hey Internet, welcome to my midlife crisis. So when was the last time you watched Speed Racer? Not the live action Speed Racer. And no, not this Speed Racer, but this Speed Racer. Yikes! When I was growing up, I loved Speed Racer. And so when I noticed that it was free to watch on YouTube, I thought it was a good idea to force my child to watch it with me. Just like my father and his father before him. But now that I'm older, rewatching the show, well, we all know it has a couple rough edges. But there was one thing in particular that really stuck out to me, but I'll get onto that later. First, let's go over what Speed Racer is, for those who might not know. And there's no better way to start than reading part of a Wikipedia article. Speed Racer, also known as Mach Go Go Go, is a Japanese manga series written and illustrated by Tatsuo Yoshida. It was originally serialized in print in Shueisha's 1966 shonen book. Adapted into anime by Tatsunoko Productions, its 52 episodes aired on Fuji TV from April 1967 to March 1968. In the United States, the show aired in syndication at approximately the same time. Now, I think a majority of us old anime nerds contribute Speed Racer to being one of the most pivotal anime in the Western Hemisphere. I would personally go as far as to say that it was the Dragon Ball of its time, and just like Dragon Ball and majority of the anime that I love, it has some crazy stuff going on. Which brings me to the main point of this video. What the fuck can't you do in a race in Speed Racer? I don't know the last time you watched racing in the real world, because they could learn a thing or two from Speed Racer. I'm just saying, NASCAR could use some wacky gadgets. Might want to leave out the saw blades though. But the wacky gadgets in the life and death situations aren't even what I'm necessarily talking about. To explain, we're going to have to do a bit of a deep dive into the race that started it all. Speed Racer starts off with a two-part episode called The Great Plan. In the episode, Pops, Speed's dad, has created designs for a new powerful engine, and he has hidden the designs in invisible ink on the windshield of the Mach 5, the fastest, coolest car to ever exist. Though Pops has the designs for the engine, he lacks the money to make his dreams a reality. That's when Speed decides to secretly enter a race to win Pops the money he needs. Why is it a secret, you might ask? Because Pops does not want him to race. You see, racing in Speed Racer is even more dangerous than in the real world. So this is literally a life and death situation in Pop's eyes. And honestly, he's not wrong. As far as he knows, he lost his first son, Rex Racer, to racing. But spoilers, we all know that he's secretly Racer X. But against his father's best wishes, Speed secretly enters the race. A quick side note, Speed also has a girlfriend named Trixie and a younger brother named Spritle, who has a pet monkey named Chim Chim. These characters will be slightly relevant during the race, especially if you're interested in accidental child and animal endangerment. Now that I've gotten through all of the setup, let's get to the race. So there are two main antagonists during the race. The first is Skullduggery, who literally almost killed Speed in a practice race the other day. The second antagonizing force is Ace Ducey and his gang, who are trying to get their hands on the Mach 5 and Pops Racers' engine plans. During the race, Ace Ducey and his gang take out other racers, block the road, and just all around suck. But that's not what is important here. What is important is at some point in the race, Skull comes to a crossroads, and at that crossroads, to the left is a 40-kilometer path, and to the right is a 25-kilometer path. Skull takes the shortcut. Speed follows Skull because he's worried he will get smashed up by the volcanoes that are down that path. Even though Skull literally tried to kill him the other day, well, Speed was right. Skull crashes and is about to fall into a pit of lava. But Speed stops and saves him, even though Skull literally tried to kill him the other day. Just goes to show how cool Speed Racer is. But this is what I've been trying to get to the whole time. There is a 5-minute and 40-second section of this race where Skull and Speed are not driving while they are either surviving a lava pit or fighting against Ace Ducey and his gang with the help of Trixie, Spritle, and Chim Chim. All the while, the other races are assumed to be racing. Once Speed finally gets the Mach 5 back and gets to the end of the shortcut, the other cars are just passing by. So my first thought was, how much slower would these cars have to be going in comparison to Skull and Speed? But after looking into it, if Skull and Speed were driving the average speed of 150 kilometers per hour, the other cars would need to be driving around the same to cancel out the 5 minutes and 40 seconds, which is pretty cool because whenever I first started watching this episode, I thought the time difference was going to be ridiculous. So good on the creators of the show. But it still leaves one lingering question. What would happen if they didn't get stopped and they just finished the race? They just show up 5 minutes and 40 seconds before everybody else and nobody bats an eye? The other stuff kind of makes sense. A crazy death race where people are trying to make money, but you can just completely skip over 5 minutes of the race and that's just chill? What if you found an even better quote-unquote shortcut and you showed up 10 minutes before everybody? How far could they push this? So I ask again, what the fuck can't you get away with in a race in Speed Racer? Well, the answer seems to be you could almost get away with anything. Now, at the end of the race, Speed ends up winning, but all the other racers were right behind him, meaning they drove those extra 15 kilometers and nobody really knew. So maybe there would have been ramifications for taking the shortcut, and we just don't know it. Speed also doesn't get the money because the officials say they have to redo the race because of the attack from Ace Ducey and his gang. But this is literally the reason I decided to make this video. Once I saw that 5 minute and 40 second section of this really old anime, it was game over. Anyways, does it make me like Speed Racer less? Hell no. If anything, it might make me love it that much more. And I was happy to find out I was wrong about the time discrepancy. That's good filmmaking. And even if I was right, who cares? The show is full of suspension of disbelief. The amount of suspension of disbelief I had watching this show as a kid honestly just makes me smile. And also, my son loved it. Speaking of suspension of disbelief, I did have one more thing I wanted to say about Speed Racer. But first, a word from our sponsor. Just kidding. It's just me. But also like and subscribe. Hey, do you wear clothes? If the answer is yes, then do I have some news for you. I drew some pictures and then I uploaded them to Redbubble, and now they're clothes. Clothes that you can buy. So head on over to Redbubble and buy some clothes. Like this Zip the Moon Rat parody shirt. Or these Marvel comic parody shirts. I really like parody shirts. So head on over to Redbubble and buy some clothes. Hey internet, welcome back. Now, I won't go on about this for too long, especially because one of my favorite YouTubers, Patrick H. Willems, has already done an awesome video about this year, and you should totally go watch it. But I want to plant my flag in the ground. I love the Speed Racer movie. I know, I said this video wasn't about the live-action Speed Racer, but I lied. Kind of. But not really. I don't know, maybe. Let me know in the comments. As I mentioned before the break, the old Speed Racer required a ton of suspension of disbelief. So my request to anybody that might revisit that live-action Speed Racer movie, try to look at it with the same level of suspension of disbelief. You might have a good time. There is one last thing I wanted to mention before I close things out. I guess it's more of a question. I keep bringing up suspension of disbelief, and I wanted to go over how it pertains to live-action anime adaptations. I'm a big fan of what we've gotten so far from the live-action One Piece series. But it is quite a lot different than something like Speed Racer, where Speed Racer completely embraces the cartoon that it is. One Piece did more of a traditional feel in many ways. I personally think both methods are valid, treating it like a cartoon or grounding it and making it a little more realistic looking. It's honestly hard for me to decide what method I like more. But what do you think? Do you think one is more valid than the other? With more live-action anime adaptations on the horizon, it'll be interesting to see which way certain properties are adapted. Anyways, Speed Racer's mom's name is Mom Racer, and I think that's hilarious. Thanks for watching.